Captain Orion Vega stood at the viewport of his private quarters, staring into the vast emptiness of space. The celestial Voyager, his command for the past 5 years, drifted silently through the Andromeda sector, carrying the weight of their recent mission to Proxima 7. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a man weathered beyond his 38 years, dark hair peppered with premature silver, deep-set eyes that had witnessed too much, and shoulders perpetually squared against the burden of command. The door chimed, interrupting his brooding. "Enter," he called, straightening his uniform jacket. Lieutenant Commander Nylara Zephyr stepped inside, the door sliding shut behind her. Even after 3 years of serving together, Orion found himself momentarily struck by her presence. Her blue skin, a rich cerulean that darkened slightly around her high cheekbones, seemed to capture and reflect the starlight. Her silver-white hair was pulled back in a regulation knot, revealing the delicate ridges along her temples that marked her cerulean heritage. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying that distinctive melodic quality of her species. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Orion gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "Not at all, Lieutenant Commander. I was expecting you." Indeed he had been, though with resignation rather than anticipation. The mission to Proxima 7 had been a tactical success but a moral catastrophe. They'd secured the contested outpost, but at the cost of 17 lives, both human and alien. Nylara had performed brilliantly, leading the ground team with exceptional skill. If anyone deserved a commendation and promotion, it was her, and that he assumed was precisely why she'd requested this private meeting. As she sat, he noticed something unusual. Nylara's normally composed demeanor seemed fragile. Her hands resting in her lap trembled slightly. The luminescent flecks in her violet eyes, another cerulean trait, seemed dimmed. "I've prepared my recommendation for your promotion to commander," Orion began, reaching for his datapad. "Your leadership during the Proxima mission was exemplary, especially under such difficult circumstances." Nylara blinked, confusion crossing her features. "Captain, That's not why I'm here." Orion paused, datapad half-raised. "No?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't want a promotion. Not after—" Her voice caught, and to his shock, moisture gathered at the corners of her eyes. Ceruleans rarely cried. Their physiological response to emotion was different from humans. "Taras Fen," she said softly. "He was only 19. Did you know that? 19 Earth years. Barely an adult by either of our species' standards. He joined my team 3 months ago, so eager to prove himself." Orion set down the datapad. "Lieutenant Fenn's death was not your responsibility, Nylara." "He died following my order," she countered, a blue-tinged tear finally escaping down her cheek, "along with 16 others." Understanding dawned on him. She hadn't come seeking advancement. She'd come seeking absolution. Or perhaps just someone who understood the weight of command decisions. "The rain," she whispered, using the cerulean euphemism for tears. "We consider it shameful to show it before others, especially superior officers. But I cannot. I haven't been able to stop since we left Proxima's orbit." Without thinking, Orion rounded the desk and knelt beside her chair. "Protocol dictated distance, but humanity demanded connection. On my first command, I lost 23 people in a single decision," he said quietly. "I can still recite every name, rank, and service number. I still see their faces when I close my eyes." Nylara looked at him. Really looked at him. Perhaps for the first time seeing the man beneath the captain's insignia. "Does it ever fade?" "No," he admitted. "But you learn to carry it differently." Her hand moved tentatively toward his, stopping just short of contact. "How do you bear it alone?" "That's the mistake I made. You don't have to." His fingers bridged the final distance, covering hers. Her skin was cooler than human temperature, smooth like polished stone. Something shifted between them in that moment. A boundary crossed, a connection formed. Her fingers turned, intertwining with his. 2 different species, united by shared burden and unspoken understanding. "The mission report," she said finally, collecting herself. "I wanted to discuss certain aspects before we transmit to command. There were inconsistencies in the intelligence we received." Orion nodded, reluctantly withdrawing his hand and returning to his side of the desk. But the invisible wall between captain and subordinate had been breached, and neither of them could pretend otherwise. "Show me," he said, activating the holographic display between them. As star charts and mission data flickered before them, Orion found his attention divided between duty and the blue-skinned woman whose vulnerability had awakened something long dormant within him. Something dangerous, something human. The ship's recreational deck was nearly empty at 0300 hours. Captain Orion Vega found Nylara there, standing before the enormous observation window that showcased the swirling nebula they were passing. Her blue skin seemed to glow in the cosmic light, absorbing and reflecting the purples and blues of the stellar nursery. "You're not sleeping either," he said. Not a question, but a statement of shared insomnia. Nylara turned, her silver-white hair loose around her shoulders for once. "Ceruleans require less sleep than humans, or so I tell myself when I'm avoiding my dreams." 2 weeks had passed since their conversation in his quarters. The mission report had been filed, sanitized of their suspicions about faulty intelligence. On the surface, everything had returned to normal. But beneath that veneer of military protocol, something had shifted irreversibly. "The Lachesis Nebula," Orion said, moving to stand beside her. "Named after one of the Greek fates who measured the thread of life." "We have a similar myth," Nylara replied. "The blue weaver who spins the cosmic threads that bind all living beings." She hesitated, then added, "My mother used to say that when two threads tangle, they're never truly separate again." The implication hung between them unacknowledged but undeniable. "I've served with 17 different species," Orion said. "But I know embarrassingly little about ceruleans. We're a private people. Some would say secretive." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "What would you like to know, Captain?" "Orion," he corrected. "We're off duty and alone." "Orion," she repeated, his name sounding musical in her accent. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," he answered honestly. "But let's start with why you joined Starfleet when so few of your people leave your homeworld." Nylara's gaze returned to the nebula. "I was considered unusual among my kind, too curious, too willing to question tradition." Her hand unconsciously traced the ridges along her temple. "These markings indicate my family lineage, scientists and philosophers for 10 generations. I was expected to continue that tradition on Cerulia. Instead, you chose the stars." "Instead, I chose the stars," she echoed. "My father never forgave me." My mother understood, though she couldn't say so publicly. As the night cycle progressed, they exchanged stories, his childhood on the crowded streets of New Singapore, her youth in the floating cities of Cerulia, his impulsive decision to enlist after his parents' death in the colonial riots, her methodical rebellion against her predetermined path. With each shared memory, the space between captain and lieutenant commander dissolved a little more. "You were on Ganymede during the uprising?" Nylara asked, eyes wide. "We studied that in tactical history." Orion laughed. "Now I feel ancient." "No, I didn't mean—" "I know," he said, his hand briefly touching her shoulder. Even that casual contact sent an unexpected current between them. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship-wide alert system. "Senior officers to the bridge. Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity. This is not a drill." They exchanged a glance, professional mask slipping back into place as they moved with practiced efficiency toward the turbolift. "Captain on the bridge," announced the night officer as they emerged. "Report," Orion commanded, sliding into the captain's chair while Nylara took her station at tactical. "Unidentified craft, sir. Not responding to hails. Trajectory suggests an intercept course. Shields up. Yellow alert." Orion's voice was calm, but his eyes met Nylara's across the bridge. "Lieutenant Commander, analysis." Her fingers danced across her console. "Configuration matches no known vessel in our database. Energy signature is unusual. They're powering weapons, Captain." "Red alert. Battle stations." What followed was a 17-minute engagement that tested every member of the crew. The alien vessel employed technology they'd never encountered. Weapons that phased through their standard shields. It was Nylara who developed the countermeasure, recalibrating their deflector array while under direct fire. When the attacking ship finally retreated, the celestial Voyager had sustained significant damage to its port nacelle and life support systems on 3 decks. Emergency teams scrambled to contain the damage. In the chaos of the aftermath, Orion found himself trapped with Nylara in a section of corridor where a support beam had collapsed. As they worked together to shift the debris, their hands met amid the twisted metal. For a moment, neither moved away. That was brilliant work with the deflectors, he said quietly. It was luck more than brilliance, she replied, but her violet eyes held his gaze. I don't believe in luck, Nylara. In the red emergency lighting, with alarms blaring and crew members shouting in the distance, time seemed to suspend. His hand turned, fingers sliding between hers, blue intertwined with tan. Orion, she whispered, and in that single word was question, warning, and invitation. Before either could speak again, the emergency teams broke through, flooding the corridor with light and sound and duty. They separated instantly, the moment broken but not forgotten. As they directed the recovery efforts, Orion caught Nylara watching him with an expression he'd never seen before. Vulnerability mixed with something deeper, more dangerous, something that mirrored what was growing in his own heart. This is unacceptable. Captain Vega. Admiral Kessler's holographic form paced the length of Orion's ready room, hands clasped behind her back. 17 casualties and now an unprovoked attack that's left your ship at half capacity. Orion stood at attention, face impassive. With respect, Admiral, I don't believe these events are unconnected. The intelligence we received before the Proxima mission was flawed, and this attack, are you suggesting sabotage, Captain? Kessler's eyebrow arched skeptically. I'm suggesting we consider all possibilities, Admiral. The older woman sighed. You've always been one to see patterns, Orion. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. Her expression softened slightly. How's your crew handling it? They're resilient. Lieutenant Commander Zephyr has been instrumental in maintaining morale. Ah yes, your cerulean officer. Command has noticed her performance records. Quite impressive. Orion nodded, keeping his expression neutral despite the unexpected pride he felt at Nylara's recognition. She's an exceptional officer. After the Admiral's transmission ended, Orion remained at his desk, reviewing the data Nylara had compiled. The attacking vessel's energy signature matched in certain key parameters, technology they'd encountered on Proxima 7. It wasn't conclusive, but it suggested a connection that couldn't be dismissed. His door chimed. Enter. Nylara stepped inside, datapad in hand. The past 3 weeks had changed something in her bearing, a new confidence tempered with vulnerability that only he was privileged to see. Since the night in the corridor, they'd maintained professional distance in public, but private conversations had continued, growing deeper with each passing day. I've completed the analysis you requested, she said formally, aware of the recording protocols in official spaces. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. Join me in the Auxiliary Observatory at 2100 hours to review your findings. The Auxiliary Observatory had become their unofficial meeting place, ostensibly because its specialized equipment aided their investigation, but in reality, because it was rarely occupied and security recordings were minimal due to scientific privacy protocols. When Orion arrived that evening, Nylara was already there, the dome-like ceiling displaying a magnified view of a distant star system. I've found something, she said without preamble, activating a holographic display between them. Communication records from Proxima 7, 3 days before our arrival. Heavily encrypted, but I've isolated patterns consistent with Black Nebula operatives. Orion frowned. The Black Nebula, a shadowy organization rumored to manipulate interstellar politics for profit, was considered more legend than reality by most of Starfleet. You believe they orchestrated the ambush? And the subsequent attack on our ship, Nylara confirmed. But the question is why? What did they gain from those 17 deaths? Orion circled the holographic display, studying the data points. Or what did they want to prevent us from discovering? They worked in tandem, assembling fragments of evidence like an intricate puzzle. As the hours passed, they moved closer to each other, the invisible barrier between them thinning with each shared insight. There, Nylara suddenly said, pointing to a sequence of transmissions. Lieutenant Fenn accessed these files just before the ambush. Orion leaned in, his shoulder brushing against hers. Weapons schematics? Why would he? Not weapons, Nylara corrected, enlarging the image. Biological samples, specifically cerulean DNA sequences. The implication struck them both simultaneously. Cerulean physiology contained unique properties coveted by various factions: regenerative abilities, resistance to radiation, neurological adaptations that enhanced certain cognitive functions. They weren't after the outpost, Orion realized. They were using it as a cover for genetic experimentation, and Fen discovered it, Nylara whispered. That's why, her voice faltered. Without thinking, Orion reached for her hand. We'll expose them, Nylara. I promise you. She looked up at him, violet eyes reflecting the starlight above them. If we're right, we're challenging forces far beyond a rogue ship or pirate faction. The Black Nebula has connections throughout Starfleet. Then we trust no one but each other. The weight of his words hung between them. Trust. It was everything in their world of duty and command. Structures. Orion, she said softly, her free hand rising to touch his face. The coolness of her blue fingers against his cheek sent a shiver through him. He should step back. He should remember his rank, her position, the regulations that governed every aspect of their professional lives. Instead, he turned his face into her palm. We shouldn't, he murmured, even as his body betrayed his words, leaning toward her. By whose laws? She challenged. Starfleet's? Earth's? Cerula's? All of them, probably. A smile curved her lips. I've never been particularly good at following rules. When their lips finally met, it was like worlds colliding. Different temperatures, different textures, yet fitting together as though designed for this moment. Her mouth was cooler than a human's, slightly sweet with a taste he couldn't identify. His hand slid into her silver-white hair, cradling the back of her head. The kiss deepened, years of unacknowledged tension finally finding release. Her arms wound around his neck, pulling him closer as his hands traced the elegant line of her spine. A sudden alert from the computer terminal jolted them apart. An encrypted message had arrived, urgent, eyes only. Reality crashed back. They were still officers, still in the middle of uncovering a conspiracy that had already cost 17 lives. Nylara straightened her uniform, composed except for the darker blue flush across her cheeks. I should go. Nylara, wait. Orion caught her hand. What just happened was inevitable, she finished. And complicated. Her eyes met his, unflinching, but not a mistake. Before he could respond, the ship-wide alert system activated. Security breach Deck 12, Section C. All security personnel respond. Their personal feelings would have to wait. Duty called, but as they rushed toward the turbo lift, the brief pressure of her fingers against his promised this conversation wasn't over. Neither of them saw the shadow that detached itself from the observatory equipment after they left, nor the small device it planted in the computer terminal they'd been using. 3 hours later, as Orion led a security team through the compromised section of the ship, a targeted explosion tore through the corridor. His last conscious thought before darkness claimed him was of Nylara's face, and the realization that their enemy was closer than either of them had imagined. The steady beep of medical equipment greeted Orion as consciousness returned. The sterile environment of sickbay came into focus gradually, and then a blue face hovering above his. Welcome back. Captain, Dr. Evixil said, his tentacled appendages adjusting something on the biomonitor. The Octavian chief medical officer had served with Orion for 3 years. You've been unconscious for 26 hours. Orion tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in his chest. The explosion, targeted and precise, came another voice. Nylara stepped into view, her professional mask firmly in place, though Orion could see the relief in her eyes. 3 casualties, 14 wounded, including yourself. You have 4 broken ribs and a concussion. Lieutenant Commander Zephyr hasn't left your side, Dr. Evixil noted with the innocent directness characteristic of his species. Most dedicated first officer I've seen in 30 years of service. Nylara's cheeks darkened slightly. The captain and I were investigating a security matter of utmost importance. Once the doctor moved away to check on other patients, Nylara stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Someone accessed our files in the observatory. They know what we've discovered. The explosion, a warning, or an attempt to eliminate you specifically. Her hand briefly touched his, hidden from view by the biobed. I've moved our investigation to a secure location and implemented triple encryption protocols. You've been busy, Orion murmured, impressed. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. I had motivation. Dr. Evixil insisted on keeping Orion in sickbay for another 48 hours. During that time, Nylara maintained the appearance of a dutiful first officer, bringing reports and updates. Only the lingering of her fingers when passing data pads, or the way her eyes held his a moment too long, betrayed the undercurrent between them. On the third night, after being released to his quarters under strict orders to rest, Orion heard his private door chime. Computer. Identify visitor. Lieutenant Commander Nylara Zephyr, the automated voice responded. Enter. She stepped inside, the door sealing behind her. For a moment neither spoke. Then, as if some invisible barrier had finally shattered, they moved toward each other simultaneously. This time their kiss held none of the hesitancy of their first encounter. Her cool lips parted beneath his, hands gripping the front of his casual tunic. His fingers traced the delicate ridges along her temples, marveling at their texture. I thought I'd lost you, she murmured against his mouth. It takes more than an explosion to get rid of me, he replied, though his arms tightened around her, betraying his own fear, not of death, but of separation. They moved to the couch, where Nylara carefully avoided his injured ribs. In the dim light, her blue skin seemed to glow with an inner luminescence. On Cerulean, she said softly, tracing patterns on his palm, we have a concept called soul resonance, the belief that certain beings are attuned to each other across time and space. Humans have similar ideas, soulmates, destiny. She smiled. My people would consider it highly illogical to fall in love with a human starship captain. Love? The word hung between them, both question and answer. Is there another explanation for why I can't imagine breathing in a universe where you don't exist? Her violet eyes held his, unflinching in their honesty. Orion touched her face, marveling at how something so alien could feel so familiar. No, he admitted. No other explanation. What followed transcended species and rank and duty. Their differences, temperature, texture, cultural backgrounds, only heightened each discovery. Her cooler skin against his warmth, the way the luminescent flecks in her eyes brightened with desire, the soft sounds she made when his lips found the sensitive area where neck met shoulder. Later, as they lay entwined, Orion traced the intricate patterns that adorned her blue skin. Not tattoos as many assumed, but natural markings unique to each cerulean. What happens now? He asked, the captain in him unable to ignore the complications their relationship created. Nylara propped herself on one elbow, silver white hair cascading over her bare shoulder. First, we expose the conspiracy. Then we decide our future. Her expression grew serious. But you should know, my people mate for life, Orion. This isn't casual for me. Nor for me, he said, pulling her close again. Though I can't offer you a traditional cerulean life. If I wanted traditional, I wouldn't be here. Her smile held both mischief and certainty. Now let me show you how ceruleans seal a bond. Dawn found them reviewing the evidence they'd gathered. Between moments of intimacy, they'd pieced together the full scope of the conspiracy, a network of Black Nebula operatives embedded within Starfleet, using military operations as cover for illegal genetic research. Commander Reyes, Orion said, staring at the data. He authorized the original mission parameters, and these communication logs show he's been in contact with known Black Nebula associates. My direct superior, Nylara noted grimly, and third in command of this vessel. We need irrefutable proof before we confront him. Orion winced as he shifted position, his ribs protesting. Nylara's eyes narrowed with determination. I know where to find it, but it will require accessing his personal quarters. Too dangerous. He's already tried to kill me once, which is why I'll go alone. Their first serious argument as a couple erupted and resolved in the span of an hour. In the end, they compromised. A joint operation with Lieutenant Coda, their Caledonian security chief whom Orion trusted implicitly, as backup. As Nylara prepared to leave, she turned back at the door. When this is over, we should discuss transfer options. Starfleet regulations, one crisis at a time, Orion interrupted with a smile. But yes, we'll figure it out. Her answering smile held promise. Until tonight, Captain. Neither of them anticipated that within 6 hours they would be fighting not just for justice, but for their very lives. Commander Reyes had anticipated their move. The trap was elegant in its simplicity, a cascade failure in the ship's security protocols that locked down the entire vessel, compartment by compartment, with Orion sealed in his ready room and Nylara trapped in the Briggs control center where she'd gone to retrieve evidence. "Captain Vega," Reyes's voice came through the comm system. "I had such hopes for your career. You were destined for admiralty, you know." Orion worked methodically at bypassing the lockout, his fingers dancing across the terminal. "Treason wasn't part of my career goals, Reyes." "Treason?" The commander chuckled. "Such a limited perspective. The Black Nebula sees beyond the artificial constraints of current political structures. The genetic potential of species like the ceruleans could advance medical science by centuries. By experimenting on sentient beings without consent. By killing 17 of our crew to cover your tracks. Regrettable but necessary sacrifices." Reyes's voice hardened. "As you and your blue lover will be." The comm went dead. Orion redoubled his efforts, finally breaking through the security override. The ship's schematic appeared on his screen, showing the systematic lockdown spreading throughout the vessel. He had perhaps 10 minutes before the ready room's life support was compromised. Across the ship, Nylara faced her own battle. 3 of Reyes's security personnel, all Black Nebula operatives, had cornered her in the Briggs control center. With the ship's systems compromised, she couldn't call for help. "Lieutenant Commander," the senior officer said, weapon raised. "Commander Reyes requests your presence." Nylara assessed her options with tactical precision. 3 armed opponents, limited space, no backup. The odds were poor, but ceruleans weren't known for accepting defeat. "I'm sure he does," she replied, then moved with the enhanced speed characteristic of her species under duress. The fight was brutal and brief. Nylara sustained a plasma burn to her shoulder, but managed to incapacitate all 3 assailants. Bleeding and in pain, she secured the evidence they'd come for, Reyes's private logs detailing the entire conspiracy, and headed for the ship's central computer core. Meanwhile, Orion had escaped the ready room through a maintenance shaft. Crawling through the narrow space with broken ribs was excruciating, but the alternative was death. He emerged on Deck 7 only to find the corridor filled with an anesthetic gas. Using his emergency breather, he pushed forward toward the auxiliary control room. Ship-wide, loyal crew members fought against the takeover. Lieutenant Kota had organized a resistance from engineering, gradually reclaiming control of key systems. Communications Officer Jung had managed to send a distress signal to Starfleet Command before being captured. It was Nylara who turned the tide. Reaching the computer core, she implemented a shutdown sequence she'd developed as a theoretical exercise months earlier. A complete systems reset that would purge all external protocols, including Reyes's lockdown commands. The ship went dark for 30 seconds, the longest 30 seconds of Orion's life as he held his position, weapon ready, in the pitch-black corridor. When emergency power engaged, he heard Reyes's voice again, this time in person. "From around the corner, it's over, Captain. Surrender now and perhaps some of your crew might survive." "That's not how this ends, Reyes." Orion stepped into view, phaser leveled at his former friend and colleague. The commander smiled coldly. "Actually, it is." The shot came from behind. One of Reyes's operatives had positioned himself in Orion's blind spot. The energy beam struck his already injured side, sending him crashing to the floor, his vision blurred, the faces of his enemies swimming above him. Predictable to the end. Reyes sighed, raising his own weapon for the killing shot. "Your cerulean is next." A blur of blue motion intercepted the commander's arm. Nylara had arrived silently, her years of tactical training evident in the precision of her attack. Reyes fired wildly, the shot going wide as Nylara forced his arm upward. What followed was a desperate struggle. Despite her injury, Nylara fought with the controlled fury of her species. Orion, fighting through the pain, managed to eliminate the second operative with a well-placed shot. When Reyes realized he was losing, he activated a personal transport device, illegal technology that could bypass the ship's shields. But as the transport effect began to shimmer around him, Nylara made a decision. She grabbed the commander, ensuring that the transporter would take them both. "Nylara, no!" Orion lunged forward, but it was too late. Both figures dematerialized, leaving him alone in the corridor with the unconscious operative and the echo of her name on his lips. For 18 agonizing minutes, the fate of his first officer and the woman he loved remained unknown. Then, as systems were gradually restored, a transmission came through from the shuttle bay. "Captain." Nylara's voice, strained but alive. Commander Reyes is secured. Medical assistance required. Orion found her there, sitting against the shuttle bay wall, a makeshift tourniquet around her thigh where Reyes had stabbed her during transport. The commander himself lay unconscious nearby, restrained with cargo straps. You followed him through an unsecured transport? Orion knelt beside her, medical team rushing in behind him. That was reckless, dangerous, against at least 15 regulations. Despite her injuries, a smile curved her lips. Effective, though. Don't ever do that again, he said, voice rough with emotion. Are you giving me an order, Captain? Her violet eyes held his, challenging. I'm asking you as the man who can't lose you. He took her hand, heedless of the medical team working around them. Not when I've just found you? The aftermath unfolded over weeks. Starfleet intelligence arrested 26 Black Nebula operatives embedded throughout the service. The genetic research facility on Proxima 7 was shut down, its subjects, including several Ceruleans, rescued and treated. Commander Reyes faced trial for treason, conspiracy, and murder. Captain Orion Vega and Lieutenant Commander Nylara Zephyr received commendations for their actions, and a formal inquiry regarding their relationship. Fraternization between officers in the same chain of command violated Starfleet regulations. The hearing was held on Starbase 12, 3 months after the conspiracy was exposed. Admiral Kessler presided, her expression stern as Orion and Nylara stood at attention before the review board. The regulations exist for good reason, the Admiral noted. Personal feelings can compromise judgment in critical situations. With respect, Admiral, Orion responded. It was our trust in each other that allowed us to expose the conspiracy and save this ship. And if you had to choose between saving Lieutenant Commander Zephyr or completing a mission objective? Before Orion could answer, Nylara spoke. I would never put Captain Vega in that position, Admiral. I would remove the choice by sacrificing myself if necessary. As would I, Orion added. Our duty to Starfleet remains paramount. Admiral Kessler studied them both for a long moment. There are precedents for exceptions to the fraternization regulations. Mixed species relationships are particularly valued for their contribution to interstellar understanding. However, adjustments would be necessary. The adjustments came in the form of a promotion for Nylara to full commander and transfer to Starfleet Intelligence, where her experience with the Black Nebula case made her uniquely qualified. She would remain on the Celestial Voyager as a special liaison, reporting directly to Admiral Kessler rather than to Captain Vega. 6 months later, as the ship orbited Sarolia for a diplomatic mission, Orion stood in his dress uniform before the High Council chambers. Beside him, Nylara wore traditional Cerulean formal attire, flowing silver robes that complemented her blue skin and white hair. Nervous? She asked, adjusting his collar. Terrified, he admitted. Your father still hates me. He respects you, she corrected. Hatred would require an emotional investment he's unwilling to make. Her violet eyes sparkled with amusement. My mother, on the other hand, is already planning the ceremonial aspects of our bonding. The doors to the council chamber opened. Inside waited not just the Cerulean leadership, but a small contingent of Starfleet admirals who had traveled specifically for this historic occasion, the first formal bonding ceremony between a human Starfleet captain and a Cerulean commander. As they stepped forward together, Orion reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a misunderstanding, his assumption about her ambition, her hesitation to show vulnerability, had evolved into something neither of them could have anticipated. Something that transcended species and rank and duty, something rare and precious in the vastness of space. Ready, Commander? He whispered. Nylara's fingers intertwined with his, blue against tan, cool against warm. Always, Captain. The ceremony began, 2 worlds coming together, not without complications or challenges, but with the promise of understanding. As the ancient Cerulean words were spoken and the Starfleet oaths exchanged, Orion and Nylara faced the future, not as captain and subordinate, not as human and alien, but as partners in every sense of the word. In the soft light of Cerulea's twin moons filtering through the chamber's crystal dome, they sealed their bond with a kiss that symbolized more than personal commitment. It represented the possibility of connection across differences, of finding home not in a place but in a person, of creating something new and beautiful from misunderstanding.